We call it our forever family, but we also call it our forever rainbow family.
So welcome, Pete. Thanks for joining us today to talk about adoption and your experience. You're very welcome. So we're here to talk about all things adoption. Would you like to start by just sharing a little bit about you and your family?
Well, I'm Pete, and I'm married to my husband, obviously, Phill, and we've got 2 little boys. I say they're little, but they're not little anymore, actually. So Brett and Aiden came to live with us. I think it's 7 years ago now. 7 years ago, last month,
Right.
and that's probably why they're not little anymore, because they came to us and they were already little people when we adopted them. So they're growing up rapidly. But there's me, Phill, 2 boys, the dog and the fish.
Wonderful. So do you remember going back 7 years, the process and what that felt like? And
I was one of these people that was probably never really going to be a dad. Partly because I'm gay, and I'm 46, so I wasn't 46 then. But I'd never really thought about having kids because it wasn't something that was really on my radar. And I'd toyed with fostering, and Phill and I had been together for 15, 16 years, and we said, there's never a really good time to do this, but this is the best time to do it. And Phill had decided that he couldn't really foster, and he wanted to adopt permanently. So we talked about it, and we talked about it for months, probably a couple of years. And then one day we saw the advert for the open evening, and we thought, well, strike while the iron's hot, and we went to the open evening, and we listened to what was said. And I remember the person running the room had said, now you've heard it all, go away, think about it, and in a few weeks' time, if you want to carry on, give us a ring. So we went away and we rang them back the next day.
Your mind was made up.
Mine was made up, yes.
And was it the confidence or the knowledge or what was it that made that happen the next day?
I think we just needed the push to do it because we'd already made our mind up.
Yeah.
And we'd already made our mind up a long time ago. But when you've got 2 people and it's just the 2 of you, and you haven't got a lot of other people to consider, but you need to make sure that you're considering each other. And I wanted to do it and he wanted to do it, but, well, you don't want to push your relationship into something new without you both really being sure. But so sometimes it takes somebody else to say, you want to do it, Get
and
on
you
with it.
both reached that decision at the same point.
That's right, yes, yeah.
Do you remember the assessment process itself?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I think we went through it quite quickly, and I think people have there's an idea that it takes a very long time, but we went through in about 9 months, which is still quite a long time, and it is quite demanding, and it is designed to make sure that you really have a think about what you're doing, and we changed social workers halfway through, which was difficult because we'd set up a relationship with a social worker, and then they had to go and do something else, and we almost had to start again. But we did sessions on our own. We sat there and did sessions together. People went off and talked to our friends and our family and that kind of thing. And it does feel quite invasive, but I really enjoyed it. Phill and I both say that we thoroughly enjoyed the process because it makes you think about yourself and what your past, your childhood, what you can do as a parent, and preparing you for that. And it makes you reflect on your own life, which is quite therapeutic actually sometimes.
You're not the first to have said that. And did you find there was education as well in that process about learning around background factors of children and experiences they may have had?
Yes, they probably prepared us or tried to prepare us for the worst.
Yeah.
And I think we learned that every child that comes through the adoption process, just by them being in the process, they've got experiences, and some of that you don't know what you're getting until much later on. And I've had my boys for 6-7 years now, and there are things now that come out from their past that they're only now able to talk about. So when they first came to live with us, we thought, oh, this is easy. We've been prepared for the worst. Actually, what we've got is quite easy. So you have to keep an open mind.
And do you know, when you mention boys, that's obviously plural, there's a decision there, isn't there, from one child to a sibling group?
Yeah, and I think we went into it, and probably this is where Phill and I were slightly different in our expectations, because he was probably expecting a child, and because I'd never really had ideas of, and I'd never, people think about, oh, I'm going to get married and this is what it's going to be like, I'm going to have children. I'd never really gone through that, so I hadn't got these preconceived ideas. So when the social worker said, there's 2 boys, that didn't faze me. Some people would have run a mile.
How about your husband?
He embraced it,
Okay.
and we both said, we could have one, but I was doing it to be a dad, and you have to take sometimes you have to take the personal thing away from it. So I could have had birth children, but there's so many kids who need a good parent. And when I started to tell, or when Phill and I started to tell people that we were thinking about it, everybody said, you'd be really good dads. And then you realise that actually, yeah, and you can handle it, you can do it. And the brothers, because they've come together, so they have this tendency to look after each other, and it just felt right, when they came to live with us.
When we're sharing the benefits of adopting a sibling group to potential adopters, we often say they share the same story, they share the same similar history. Have you found that to be a benefit for your boys?
My boys had, because of the age difference, one of them, the older one, had more time with his birth family and has more experiences. And they're not all negative, don't get me, we don't, but they had more experience, and they moved through various different foster carers, and after a couple of years they ended up with the same foster carer together. So they do share experiences. Some parts of their story are widely different,
right? Yeah.
And that kind of throws a bit of a spanner in the works, because they think they know each other, and then there are underlying things where one has had a completely different world to the other one. So sometimes it's divisive, but in terms of, is it a good idea to adopt sibling groups? Most definitely. Yeah, most definitely.
And you mentioned birth family there. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet any of the birth relatives?
We said that we would, and I know a lot of my friends who've adopted have very good relationships with foster carers and with birth families. It wasn't an option for us,
Right.
and although we were asked, and we said yes, and I wanted to be able to have the opportunity to meet the birth mum, and then in the future, when I wanted to be able to say to my kids, yes, I've met her, because I know in our situation, birth mum wasn't a bad person. She just couldn't cope with kids, and probably isn't ever going to be able to. But I want to be able to say to the kids, no, she wasn't a bad person, and I know that because I've met her. And unfortunately, that's never happened. But I know plenty of people who have done it and found it a rewarding, useful experience.
Yeah, interesting. So just going back a bit about your assessment process, you've mentioned already you're gay, you have a husband. Was there an angle of being a same-sex couple throughout the adoption process, in terms of, did that experience feel any different, or did you...
Probably only for us.
Right.
And that, I guess that was one of the things that stopped me from ever doing it in the first place, was the idea, and it's the notion of me having children, and those children in the playground at school, and somebody says, "Hey, you've got your dad's gay," and then I started to do other things, and I started to I did some work in a school and that kind of thing, and I realised that every other kid that's in that playground these days has some sort of blended family thing going on. And actually having two dads isn't actually, it's interesting, it's different, but it's no more than usual as living with your gran, or having one dad, or having two mums, or any other sort of situation. But when we went to adopt, nobody said, and I think Phill thought they would say, two dads might not be a good idea. Nobody did that.
No.
Nobody.
Yeah.
There wasn't any hint of that.
Yeah.
And of sort of 7 or 8 adopters, there was us, and there was another same-sex couple. So that's not a bad ratio in the first place. And the boy's other sibling, he was adopted by 2 mums.
Okay.
Which was quite strange. So they got 2 dads, and neither one got 2 mums.
And what advice would you give to other same-sex couples considering adoption, Pete?
I wouldn't be as brash as to say, "Oh, just go and do it," because it just doesn't work like that. The fact that you're a same-sex couple won't have any bearing on your ability to do the job, and it won't have any bearing on the decision-making process and that kind of thing. It's another layer of your life, but then all of our lives have that many layers anyway. This is just another layer, really. Yeah.
And I guess then that's just another conversation you've had supporting the boys growing up, understanding your relationship.
Completely.
Yeah.
And we talk they're very comfortable with it. And the more kids can be comfortable with different stuff, then the better the people that they are, really. Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about adoption support. We've spoke about the first part and the middle, if you like. Do your children have currently any additional needs? And can you tell us a little bit about that within your family?
Aiden, our youngest, he probably spent less time in vulnerable settings, shall we say. He's developed quite bad anxiety, and he has quite a lot of difficulty in handling his emotions and self-regulating between being calm and being super angry. And you might people would label it and say, "Oh, he's got some sort of anger management issues." He's not wanting to be angry. He just has difficulty working out where he is on the scale, and that got an awful lot worse when he got to sort of 6 or 7, and we've had a lot of therapy and a lot of support, and that has so much calmed down. Brett, our eldest, he has learning difficulties, and he has quite a lot of other genetic conditions and things that need to be monitored. But his special needs make him quite different to his brother, and that's something that it adds another layer to our family, I suppose, if you like. But we started off and we thought, you get 2 kids and you start your family and you think, oh, everything's perfect, and then as you go through, as the children get older and their personalities change, and any issues that they've got might change as well. So in the end, I put my hand up in the air and I said, our family needs some help. And here we are.
So who did you ask for help from?
I think we just moved to the area. And although I'm from Stockton originally, we've been away and the kids come from another city. So when we landed here, one of the reasons we moved back to Stockton was my mum and dad live quite close. My brother still lives in the area. So support network. But I think I picked up the phone and I think I rang the council and I just said, I need to speak to a children's social worker, please. And expecting somebody to say, oh yeah, that's you and everybody else. And I think I got a call within a couple of days from a social worker who said, I understand that you're having some issues. what do you need? And there was somebody sat in my house within a couple of days. And that wasn't a case of, yes, we can fix your family problems. She made that very clear. But there was this support available and that support, and we go and do this and we try that sort of signposting thing. And, from that day, just knowing that there was somebody else that was on our side, that just personally made me feel so much better, because we'd been digging holes with the kids, and then suddenly actually there was somebody there that might be able to help us do something about this, and that just makes you feel so much better.
So it sounds like your support network definitely grew as well when you moved into Stockton area.
It grew with the family, and then the being involved with somewhere like ATV. Our kids come along, they come to the children's sessions here. They don't come because they're adopted. They come because they're sociable kids. And all the kids that they're playing with have that thing in common. And I don't think they really talk about it, but it's just in the background. It's also a really good chance for the parents to get together. And quite often I'll be sat out there while the kids are playing, and there are 5 or 6 parents who will come together, and we don't know each other very well. But it's that sitting and talking about shared experiences, and my kid does that. Yes, my child does that. Don't worry about it. And that expands your support network as well. Because initially, when we first moved to Stockton, we did a bit of things on Facebook. We're an adoptive family. Is there anybody else who wants to come and be friends? 0. No reply. Nobody. But this sort of place facilitates that. And that's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, that's good to hear. We know the boys really respond well when they come into the groups. I've been in the office myself and heard our children's groups in operation, and laughter and running around and sharing activities. Do you think there's any development of other activities we could kind of promote for our children's groups?
I think kids are all different, and my two are very much, they're as happy, I'm quite lucky I suppose, they're as happy sat playing on a screen as they are running about or playing football or whatever. Not all kids will have that range of activities, but I think I've found here, sometimes, they'll be in this room and they'll be doing something crafty, or they'll be doing something with paint or making slime. The making slime thing I'm not that thrilled about, because 7 months later I've still got slime all over the decking at home that I can't quite get off. But sometimes they're out playing football. I think they went bowling one night. And they get fed as well. All of those things, I think for all the kids that come, there must be something in that range of activities that they like doing. But for my kids, it's the social thing.
Do you still have access to support now? Yeah.
We've had a lot. We do the ATV stuff, and I come twice a week for that because I've got 2 boys, so the one comes along me.
So 2 separate children's groups.
Two separate sessions.
Good to get you a desk.
Well, I bring my laptop and sit outside sometimes. So we've had a lot of therapy from various people and various professionals, and sometimes that's been organised in a quite official way, but then sometimes I can be in this building and there's people in here, and I can just go and say, while I'm here, can I ask you this? Or and in a couple of months ago we were having some problems with Aiden, and I just picked up the phone and I rang my social worker and just said, can we have a chat about this, because this is something that I think I want to find out a bit more about, and she just said, go and have a chat with that person, go and do that. Although quite often the support that you get is, don't worry, it's not don't panic, we can. This is how you there's no quick fixes in any of this, but it's having somebody to listen and having somebody to point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. So I'm going to move on now to Adoption Tees Valley, kind of turning 5 actually. We'll have been here for 5 years in May. And we're asking our adopters about, what has adoption taught you? Has it changed you?
Yeah.
Reflecting,
Like I said, I was one of those people who was never going to have children. And you walk around the supermarket and you hear a screaming child. As a non-parents will understand it. You think, I wish that child would shut up. Why is that child screaming? Why can't that parent look after its child? All of that, and then suddenly you realise it just puts a, you appreciate that. You appreciate why that is the way it is, and it's a cliche, I suppose, but it broadens your horizons. I've done. I used to walk past the school every day. I used to drive past for 10 years, more than 10 years. I drove past that school, and it was just a building. And it was probably the cause of not being able to get up and down the road because of all the parked cars. And then a couple of years later, my child's in, I got both children in that school. And now I'm a school governor. In fact, I was chair of governors at one point. And I've done other things similar to that now. And they have it broadens your horizons. It really does. It has enriched my life. Yes, it stops me going on holidays as often as I want to, and it doesn't mean that I can't always go out and do what I want to when I want to. But it's not about that. And I sit down now and I maybe do some homework with one of them, and it taxes your own, but it makes you think differently. And it's I didn't understand, I think, what being a dad was about. It works both ways, and we might shout and scream, and then to have my kids come up to me when I come in at the end of the day, and they run up to you and dad, and you get a hug. It's that unconditional love thing. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And I imagine your leisure and your holidays have changed.
Completely.
I know you have.
Yeah. We've got a caravan.
Yeah.
And for a while we had a camper van because we thought it would be a good idea to be able to take our little world around with us, and it would be a safe thing. And we ended up always going to Scarborough. So in the end, we just bought a static caravan at Scarborough. But the idea of putting my kids on a plane and taking them away for a fortnight to a different place with a different world, with a different language and a different set of scenario, a different setting, it would be lovely for me and Phill, but it would be horrible for the kids because they need that consistency. So now we can jump in the car and we can go to the caravan, and we get our respite care, and the kids get a holiday. And they're in a safe space where they know everybody else. And a lot of parents would say, I don't want to go to the same place, I want to go somewhere different. But you have to sort of compromise with that. And in the future they'll leave home and I'll be able to go to Spain again.
What are the key milestones you think you've reached within your family?
One of them is probably the bonding thing, because our kids came to us when they were 4-ish and 6. I really ought to know that exactly. I do know the birthdays, I promise.
I'll test.
But yeah, but they were already little personalities, and the bonding thing has been quite difficult for all of us. Them because they'd had quite a lot of instability and they'd been at different foster parents and that kind of thing, and us because when they're not birth children, you don't have those early years of bonding, and for a while it's almost as though we were kind of just living together. We were a family, but we were just living together, and then that milestone has happened when the attachment has sort of happened and the glue, if you like, has started to glue us together. And when they first came to live with us, if something had gone wrong, they would have walked out the house. And we always thought, well, actually, if they went to live with somebody else, they probably wouldn't notice. Now, that attachment has sort of built now, and we've bonded and we're a family, and now we start to move on. You know, they're starting to leave school or go and now I sit there and think, blimey, it's been 7 years. Where did that 7 years go? And it hasn't gone. It hasn't gone in the blink of an eye. And it hasn't, it hasn't been easy. But there've been times when we've thought we've taken on so much now. But you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
It's a really good way of describing how attachment does build up. It takes its time, doesn't it? And I like that, the glue.
Yeah. I think we thought it would just happen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Yeah. It's like any relationship. You've got to put a lot of work into it. But the benefits are wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful. And a nice one to end on. But what are your hopes for the next 5 years?
I want my kids to reach whatever their potential is, because they're both very different. And as they get older, their potential is going to be different between the two of them. But they are happy and confident, and I want them to build on that. I don't want anything to be like that to be able to get in their way. And if they come out as good, nice, well-rounded individuals, who achieve their potential, then that's what we're doing. That's what it's about.
The delightful boys out there,
Thank you.
Yeah. They are.
A couple of months ago, we were sat in the van, and one of Brett's friends asked him what it was like to change families. And we call it our forever family, but we also call it our forever rainbow family. And Brett sat there playing on his computer game, and you know how kids are sort of not having a conversation properly because they're doing that. They're listening, but they're doing that. And his friend said, "What was it like?" And Brett just stopped, put his game down, and he said, "It was a bit of a miracle, really." And then he picked his game back up again, and he was back into his world. It was a lucid moment, and it was lovely.
And you heard that.
And I'm sat there driving along.
Proud as punch.
Proud as punch. Tear in my eye.
Yeah, so. Giving me one. Is there anything else you'd like to say about, I
think about ATV, I understand why ATV happened, and the support that's been available for us has just been wonderful, and having people available, and it's something. It's easy as putting you all in the same building. Yeah. It's about making that support accessible, and we've been welcomed, and the kids. I mean, the kids walk around this place now, second home to them. They know where everything is. But it's just been really, really useful, and it's just helped us through our journey. And I know that in the future, when we need more help or we need some support, it's here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pete. That's been really interesting.